I am a student and I study in the Academy of Finance, and I really like my studies. They're very interesting. Question number 2. So you're talking to a computer and it feels very unnatural. It feels very strange. But in IELTS, it's face-to-face with an examiner. So it's very friendly. It's very human. So it is one-to-one. It's just you and the examiner, and there is a recorder. There is a voice recorder, which is on the table. Just ignore it. Pretend it's not there. Some people, they, hello, my name is Lynn. Nice to meet you. The human's there, that's not the human. Ignore the voice recorder. The test will take anywhere from 11 to 14 minutes. So minimum 11 to maximum 14. Even if you're not finished, the test has to stop at 14 minutes. Or, on the other hand, if you sit there silently, you have no English, it will take 11 minutes. Could you tell me your full name, please? Could you tell me your full name, please? Let's talk about what you do. Are you a student? Are you a student? Where do you study? Where do you study? Okay, 11 minutes of silence. So minimum 11, maximum 14. There are 3 parts. 3 parts in total. And you are marked on 4 categories. These are the 4 categories. The first one's called fluency and coherence. Fluency means, can you speak not too slowly and not too quickly? Okay. Fluency is, can you speak quickly enough, but not too quickly and not too slowly? Okay, that's fluency. It also means, can you speak without stopping too much? Okay, hesitations we call them. I think that it's really good. Because that's called hesitation. So fluency is, can you speak quickly enough without stopping too much? However, IELTS realizes that everybody needs time to think. Everyone needs time to think, so it's okay to think of content, but IELTS doesn't want you to stop because of language. So it's okay to say, so do you think globalization is a positive thing or a negative thing? Well, I think globalization in general is a positive thing because it really helps countries to integrate in the global world and it helps their economies. That's okay, because I was hesitating to think about my ideas. That's an interesting question. That's fine. But what's not fine is, I think globalization is positive. That's not okay, because that's language hesitation. Coherence means, do your answers make sense? Okay, if the question is, do you think globalization is a positive or a negative thing? Very interesting question. I like cats more than dogs. I think cats are really friendly. What? Question about globalization and you're talking about cats. Doesn't make any sense. That's not coherent. Lexical resource means your vocabulary. Okay, so do you have enough vocabulary to be precise? And are you able to explain if you don't know the word? IELTS wants to see if you can explain things if you don't know the exact word. So for example, if I don't know this word, this thing here, but I'm able to explain it. So for example, yes, in my meeting room, we have lots of technology. We have a projector, we have a computer, and we have lots of things that can record your voice. Things that can record your voice. The microphone. Okay? But I'm able to explain it if I don't know the word. Somebody who is weak would say, we have computers, projectors, and what's it called? Somebody would not be able to paraphrase. So IELTS expects you to have a good range of vocabulary, but also you can explain if you don't know the words. So don't worry too much about using formal, less common vocabulary. It's fine to explain if you don't know the word. It's completely okay. Grammar, similar to writing, IELTS cares about your range and your accuracy. Can you use more complex sentences without making too many mistakes? If you make a mistake in your speaking, it's okay to correct it. So yesterday I went to the beach. It's okay to correct it, but you don't want to correct every mistake. Because if you correct every mistake, that's going to affect your fluency. Yesterday I went to the beach. It was very good. Great, because I had a good time. I had a good time. It will affect your fluency. So don't worry about perfect grammar. It's okay to self-correct a few times, but not too much. And pronunciation. Pronunciation, IELTS cares about a few things. Sounds. So if you say, this is my mother, and that is my father, and this is my family, okay, then the sounds are not accurate. So IELTS cares about the sounds, but they also care about other things like your stress. If you say, yesterday I go to the beach, and it was very fun. Okay, the word stress is not exactly correct. If you say, I like to take many photographs. I really like to take photographs. In fact, I have a camera. And I like to take lots of photographs with my camera. And it's very interesting. And I like photographs very much. What? Oh, photographs with your camera. It's interesting. So it's the word stress. It's also your intonation. I really like to go to the zoo because it is very interesting and there are many interesting animals at the zoo. And in general, I really like going to the zoo because there are many fun things to do at the zoo. And I wish Hanoi would have a better zoo in the future because flat intonation is very tiring. Connected speech. I really like to go to the zoo because it is very interesting and I sound very boring, like a computer. I sound like Siri on my iPhone. So connected speech is important. And a few other things. So it's not just your sounds, but it's also can you use stress, intonation, connected speech, etc., etc. Each category is worth 1/4 of your mark. Okay, they are marked separately. And your final mark is an average of those 4. So for example, if you get 5, 7, 7, and 5, 5, 7, 7, 5, your overall will be a 6. It's just an average. You are not marked on your body language. You're not marked on your body language, so you can sit like this. You can use the greatest body language in the world. Doesn't matter. There's no marks for body language. I find body language can help you be more confident, make you feel confident, but you don't get any marks if you don't use body language, or if you do, there's no marks for that. But I think it helps you feel confident. There is no comparison, so it's not, well, he was better than her, so I think he's a 6 and she's a 5. Well, oh, he was better than him, so he must be a 7. He's a 6 and she's a 5. Oh, she was the worst. Maybe 3? A 3.5. That's not how it's marked. Each candidate is marked separately using the criteria. So there are no comparisons. It's all marked separately. So what happens, actually, let me skip ahead a little bit. Yeah, this is the website for the speaking marking criteria. j.mp/IELTS-SB. IELTS-SB. IELTS-SB. And similar to the writing, they give you very detailed criteria in each of these 4 categories. So again, if you need a 6, look at 6. Look above and below. And think about what you need to do for each of those criteria. So what happens in each section? Section 1 is very simple. Personal questions about you. They're very easy questions. They're very simple questions. So you don't need to give a long, extended answer. They're questions like, do you work or are you a student? So you don't say, well, that's a very interesting question. No, it isn't. It's a very interesting question. If I had to say, I guess my answer would be, well, sometimes I'm a student, but I also have a part-time job. I guess I work. Well, maybe I'm a 70% a student, 30% employee. Although on the weekends I work more than I study, so maybe it's 50-50. Oh, well, on the other hand, do you work or are you a student? However, on the other hand, you say, do you work or are you a student? I'm a student. What do you study? Finance. Where do you study? University. Do you enjoy your studies? No. Yes. Why? Because I like it. Why? I told you, because I like it. Okay, so you want to be explaining, but you don't want to be saying too much or too little. If you're saying too much, the examiner will politely stop you. So, well, first of all, I like that. Second of all, thank you. So let's talk about, and if you're not saying enough, the examiner will ask you follow-up questions. If you notice that the examiner keeps asking you follow-up questions, it means you're not speaking enough. It's the examiner trying to tell you, talk more, say more. Or if the examiner is always saying, thank you, thank you. It means you're saying too much. That will take about 4 to 5 minutes in total. 4 to 5 minutes. You'll get a range of topics, 2 or 3 topics. The questions are very familiar topics. TV, music, food, computers, films, very familiar topics. So you don't need to memorize answers, you don't need to prepare much. They're very familiar topics. Questions are very simple. If you don't understand the question, you can ask the examiner to repeat. So, do you work or are you a student? Could you repeat? Do you work or are you a student? Ah! Sorry, could you repeat? That's okay. That's okay. The worst thing that can happen is if you don't understand. So, do you think blah 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 is better than blah blah? a very interesting question. I think so. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's very interesting. Many people agree. In general, I agree. What? If you don't understand the question, it's okay to ask to repeat. Part two, sorry. In part two, the examiner will give you a topic, and you'll have 1 minute to prepare, 1 minute to think, and you'll be able to make some notes if you want. You don't have to, if you don't want to, but I think it's a good idea to write your notes on paper so that you can remember. It's a very stressful test, so you'll probably forget things. Taking notes is useful, I think. You are expected to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. You are expected to speak for 1 to 2 minutes, as much as you can. So try and speak for 2 minutes. Even though they say 1 to 2 minutes, try and speak for 2 minutes. Okay? Don't worry about the time. The examiner will stop you at 2 minutes. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Some people get very scared. They say, and in conclusion, thank you. No, it just means 2 minutes is up. Okay? So if the examiner stops you, don't worry, it's okay. Don't panic. Oh. Don't fight. I'm not finished! Try and speak for 2 minutes. Okay? How do you know what 2 minutes feels like? The best thing is to practice at home by yourself. Get the feeling of 2 minutes. You'll know what it feels like after a bit of practice. But always try and speak as much as you can. Even if you're not finished, it's okay. If you don't speak enough, if you say, today I'd like to talk about my favorite teacher. My favorite teacher was at the Academy of Finance, and her name was Miss Huayang, and she was a very nice teacher. So in conclusion, Miss Huayang was my favorite teacher. 12 seconds. The examiner will just look at you. You feel it burning. It feels like a burning fire. I'm not finished yet. That just means keep going. If the examiner's looking at you, it means keep going. Yes, as I was saying, Mrs. Huayang was my favorite teacher. Oh, she taught me Introduction to Finance. And I really like her because she was very young and very enthusiastic. And I still remember the first lesson with her, and she blah, 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 blah. So if you speak too short, the examiner will just wait. Okay, so if you feel a silence, it just means keep going. If you're 2 minutes, the examiner will just say, thank you. And in part 3, this is related to the topic in part 2. So if I just talked about my favorite teacher, part 3 might be about education. Let's talk about education. Somehow it's related to the part 2 topic, but it's a little bit more abstract. Things that you've never thought about. Is the quality of education in your country good, or does it need improvement? That's an interesting question. Do you think the style of teaching is appropriate in your country? That's an interesting question. If you could change one thing about the education system, what would you change? That's an interesting question. Let's talk about changes in education. How is the world's education changing? That's an interesting question. So the questions will be a little bit strange, a little bit abstract. The important thing for part 3 is you can handle difficult questions, which means you can do things to have time to think. So is the education system changing? Just one minute. Let me think. Okay, that's not a good idea. Good idea would be, well, I've never thought about that before, and I'm not exactly sure, but I guess, meanwhile I'm thinking. So using phrases to kill time while you think. And that will help you in your fluency. That will help you in your fluency because you're not stopping too often to think. So things like, that's a very interesting question. Well, I've never thought about that before, but, well, I'm not exactly sure about this, but I guess I would say, and if you're good, you can do it very slowly. Well, that's an interesting question. Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I guess I would probably say yes, but... And if you're good, you can make it very stretched out. You don't want to say, well, that's a very interesting question. A few tips, the more English you speak, the better you'll do in the speaking test, of course. I know it's very hard sometimes to speak English to somebody from your own culture. It feels strange sometimes, but you all have a common goal, right? Get your IELTS 6.0 in speaking or whatever. So things like having a club. I don't know if you already have an English club or a speaking club. That's useful. Even a group of friends, 3 or 4 friends who are committed to improving your English. You can have 1 hour a day of English. You can only speak English in that 1 hour. There are things you can do. But the most important is to get used to speaking English. So it's just part of your routine. If you only use English in English class, it's not part of your routine and you won't do very well on the speaking test. But if you get into the habit of speaking English, even if it's an hour a day, then it becomes natural. I can switch between the 2 languages. Although accuracy is important, remember IELTS is not a grammar test. It's not, oh, grammar mistake! Oh, grammar mistake! Oh, forgot the S! That's not what happens. Okay? It's how serious are the grammar mistakes. So, yes, accuracy is important, but don't try and speak perfect grammar. You're going to be very slow. So you might get a good score on grammar, but your fluency will be like a 3. Don't worry too much about grammar. It's okay to ask the examiner to repeat a question. If you don't understand, it's fine. You won't lose any marks. You don't have to tell the truth. IELTS is a language test, not an honesty test. If you have better English by telling a lie, tell a lie. Okay? Just like the writing, no one knows. No one knows if you're telling the truth. So if it gives you a better answer, tell as many lies as you want. And don't feel guilty. Yes, I get to Singapore 12 times. I told you a lie. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Don't feel guilty about it. It's a language test. If you can't remember a specific word, microphone, explain it. Just paraphrase. And that's okay. And always explain and justify your answers, especially in part 3. Part 3, your answers will be a bit longer, so make sure you explain why you think that. And it's okay to use examples. Okay? If the question is about the education system, you can talk about my university, or my teacher, my lessons. It's okay to use personal examples. It's fine. And sometimes those examples help you to extend your answer. So if you have a very short answer, you might want to just give an example. Yes, I think education is changing quite a lot. For example, in my university, now we have to study less than before, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you explain your answers, especially in part 3. We already looked at that. We already talked about that. It's okay to ask for clarification. So sorry, could you repeat the question? I'd like you to describe a circus. So what does circus mean? So what do you do in your spare time? Spare time. Does spare time mean free time? Yes. Relax and be confident. I know it is a test, it is a speaking test. You paid a lot of money. But remember, it's your time to be an actor. In the speaking test, you are an actor or an actress. Okay? So this is your 14 minutes to be an actor. You can pretend to be confident even if you're a nervous wreck. Okay? Just pretend to be confident. It's the only thing the examiner knows about you is that 14 minutes. So, be an actor, change your personality for 14 minutes to be confident. Don't prepare or memorize speeches. A lot of people, they read books about speaking. They learn to speak from a book. It doesn't work. And they memorize every single Part 2 speech in the world. There's lots of books published in China about this thick, and they have every speaking topic imaginable. 1,000 IELTS speaking tests. And somehow people try and memorize all of them, and on the IELTS they get a different topic. Uh-oh, I didn't memorize that one. So it's okay to prepare. It's okay to prepare about common topics, but memorizing answers from a book, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Try and introduce Part 2. So for example, if the question is, describe your favorite teacher, don't just say, my favorite teacher is Wai, because she is very lovely. Okay, but introduce. Today I'd like to tell you about my favorite teacher I had at university. Today I'd like to tell you about an interesting meal that I cooked with my family. Today I'd like to talk about an interesting holiday I had when I was a child. Introduce it and then start talking about it. Else? When you're planning, when you have the 1 minute to plan, think about how you will organize your notes. So, because there are 4 topics, there are 4 bullet points on the paper, a lot of people do like the grid. Like you have 2 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Think about how you'll map out your ideas. And like I said, try to use phrases instead of So things like, well, actually, in my view, things like that.